Hello, folks. Welcome to Holding On with Hope, where I talk to interesting people about interesting topics. My name is Steve Holder, and I am your host. My guest this evening is Arturo Vasquez, and we'll be talking about PTSD, and then we're going to have a little fun and talk about professional wrestling. So, welcome, brother. Glad to have you with me.
Thanks, sir. Like I said, I appreciate you having me on today.
I'm glad I do. So, you know, tell us a little bit about your background. How would you describe yourself?
So I joined the military when I was 17, and like it was right around, it was 2005. So I had this real shot of patriotism kind of running through me. Still I was in school when the 9/11 attacks happened, on the way to a junior ROTC class. So, I get in there and I didn't even want to do the ROTC thing at first, to be honest with you. But I get into class and, they explain to us what's happening. And I'm just like, okay, you know what, this seems like something that I might be able to really wrap my head around. Because, again, it was a shot of patriotism that I had that I'd never had before. Fast forward a couple of years and I just really fell in love with the military lifestyle. So when I was 17, I got a waiver to join the military, and I joined as a paralegal, which at the time I had told my mom that it wouldn't be that big of a deal. It's just a paralegal. I'll just sit behind a desk and not do much. And it's been a really wild ride doing that. At the top of the show, you started off mentioning we were going to talk about PTSD. Most of my PTSD actually comes through secondhand from my time as a paralegal in the Army. So when I was growing up, I always heard about PTSD and shell shock of, the World War II era. And I didn't understand that it was something that wasn't just a wartime issue.
Yeah.
I thought that, you had to be blown up to have PTSD. You had to, experience combat to have PTSD. As you start to get more invested in learning about the disorder, you find out that there are so many PTSD victims in America from Americans.
Yeah.
I don't want to agitate or bring up too much of a trigger warning for some people, but assault victims are one of the highest groups of people, highest percentage of people, that had PTSD that went undiagnosed until the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Because as a society, I think we really just interpreted PTSD as just being a wartime issue. And now, luckily we've gotten a lot more cognizant of, who all can be affected by this.
Yeah. So how old were you when you first were diagnosed with PTSD?
I was actually 20. So I want to kind of give a disclaimer real quick. I'm going to talk about something very graphic and very uncomfortable for a couple of minutes, if that's okay.
Sure.
Like I said, my job was as a paralegal when I was in the Army. And when I was 18, I arrived at my first duty station. And this was in 2006. So it was a very exciting time for the internet. But on the other side of that, it was a very new time for the law as it pertained to governing the internet. And this is where the trigger warning comes in. One of my first cases involved pictures and videos of underage kids we were charging to soldier. And I had to look through, I was sitting there with the attorney and I was looking through all this stuff with the attorney. And I went up to my boss one day and I said, hey, this is really difficult. And I'll never forget it. She said, hey, you'll be fine. I get paid too much to look at that right now. And that always stuck with me because it really impacted the way that I led my soldiers when I was in charge of soldiers. I always said I'll never put someone in that situation And so it impacted me that way. But I didn't realize that it had a lot of influence on my development just as a human. I'm 18, I'm looking at these vile photos, I'm listening to the videos. We're taking notes on how to charge everything. And, just to clarify, this wasn't like let's just sit down and pop this in and watch it. Like we're actually gathering evidence and watching as little of it as we can. And I've been married twice. In my first marriage, when I would try and talk to my spouse about that, she would say, well, I don't want to hear about that, like, all right, fine. So I'm going to internalize it. And then I got deployed to Iraq. And my experience in Iraq, I was very fortunate. Did not leave my installation. We did not really catch any incoming fire or any rounds or anything like that when I was in Iraq. It was honestly a pleasant experience, all things considered. But I hadn't really dealt with the trauma of, the cases that I was working.
Yeah.
When I came back, I got divorced, I got remarried, and at the time, the Army was very big on prescribing narcotics for just about anything. I hurt my knee. Sorry, I'm saying so much, by the way. I'm not used to talking about this, so I'm just kind of recalling it. So I had hurt my knee, and they had given me Vicodin and a medicine called Trazodone. And as I progressed through the next couple of months, I didn't realize it, but I was starting to get addicted to these things.
Yeah.
Well, when I got married the second time, my wife wanted me to, she wanted me to at least be able to talk to her about these things. Like, hey, this is what's going on. This is, how I'm feeling. So I would start to kind of open up, and then she would go to bed and I wouldn't be able to sleep. So I'd take the sleeping medicine I had. And then I would go to work. I'd be surrounded by all this stuff. I'd come home, I'd talk, and then the sleeping medicine wouldn't work so well. So I'd start drinking alcohol. So all of this stuff kind of led to me going to the mental health professionals in March of 2008. And I just laid all this stuff out. Said, hey, this is what I've got going on. And he said, yeah, you have PTSD. I said, well, I can't have PTSD. I've never been in combat.
Yeah.
So, we were talking, and I had a daughter at the time. It impacted me so much that I couldn't do things that a dad typically does. I couldn't change my daughter without getting like this uneasy feeling in my stomach. And not just because this kid was blowing up diapers either. I couldn't give her a bath without feeling uncomfortable. She's a baby, but whenever I would try and even lay down on the couch and, just kind of hold her, I was unable to bond because I was being taken back to these pictures, these videos, these interviews, these sound bites. And it really impacted me being able to be a father early on. So around the time I turned 21, I turned to a much more unhealthy coping mechanism to just get through the days, because I don't want to be the punk soldier that has to go talk to mental health people, and I didn't even get blown up.
Yeah.
So I turned to, like I said, alternative means to try and fix it. And that led me to overdose in October of 2008. So I've got this PTSD diagnosis. I'm in inpatient facility, and my boss comes down and she says, hey, you're deploying in a month to Afghanistan. And it just all kind of hit me. I'm sitting here, I got this baby that I don't barely even know. I'm on my second marriage that, I'm obviously failing her. And now I've got to get ready to go and, deploy to a country I've never been to. I'm trying to get sober. I'm trying to deal with all of these emotions. And I decided the best thing to do would be to push it down, because that's the way in my head, it would work best.
Yeah, just suck it up and go on, right?
Yes, sir. Just suck it up and just move forward. So I come out of the hospital and then I deploy within a month, like she told me I would. And when I deployed, I had a group of soldiers I was in charge of. And we would sit down and we would talk. We would go out on convoys, we would come back, we would just sit down and talk. You know, it's my experiences, I came back. So my experiences were obviously much better than other people's, you know, have been. I came back with all of my limbs, all of my extremities. Very thankful for that. So a person who didn't come back with us, I was sitting down talking to him one day. And, you know, I said, it's weird because ever since I've been over here, I've been sleeping better. And he asked me to kind of open up a little bit more. So I kind of, you know, peeled the curtain back a little bit. And he said, yeah, man, that's PTSD. They teach you all about that when you go to the mental health here. And I kept resisting it. This isn't PTSD. And we came back, we redeployed, and I got put into another prosecution job where I'm dealing with similar cases. And I start noticing I'm losing sleep again. And I start drinking alcohol again. But in my mind, it can't be PTSD. PTSD only comes from combat.
Yeah.
And then I got sent to Fort Bragg. I actually asked to go to a place called Fort Bragg. It's one of the largest Army installations that America has. And I went there, and instead of doing prosecution, I was doing defense. So now we're defending these people that are accused of these crimes. And one day I walked into my boss, a gentleman named Sean Foster. I walked into him and I said, hey, I don't know if I'm okay right now. You know, and I kind of walked him through like, this is what's going on. This is what's going on. And he didn't even hesitate. Like, he took the entire stigma out of behavioral health for me. He said, oh yeah, you need to go talk to somebody. And then just went back to what he was doing like it was a normal conversation.
Yeah.
So by him doing that though, it took the stigma out of it for me. And I went and I talked to somebody and they said, yeah, you've never dealt with this. And that was 8 years ago. And I still go once every 3 or 4 months because I still do legal work. So I still see that side of people. But, you know, I sleep now, I communicate much better than I used to. And I talk to my kids like a father, as opposed to talking to my kids like someone who thinks the world is out to get them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, without getting too graphic, that's kind of my journey so far with PTSD. It's been very difficult, but I'm very thankful to have gone through things the way that I did, because I've lived so many, this is a horrible way to handle this situations, that I can impart that on some people, I hope, and just say, yeah, you know, turning to the bottle is not really the right way to do it. Turning to,
Yeah,
you know, these outside sources isn't the right way to do it. You know, you should sit down and talk to somebody. So I'm thankful for that.
yeah. You know, I'm glad you mentioned the stigma, because there is a lot of stigma attached to not only PTSD, but depression, anxiety, and any mental illness, you know, and people act like, well, it's some horrible thing. And some people will say, well, you're just crazy. And, you know, it's ridiculous. Now, I know what it's like to go through that. I had my own struggles with alcohol and drugs for a long time. But for the grace of God and what I learned in a wonderful 12-step program, I've been clean and sober for 36 years.
Well,
And
congratulations.
that doesn't make me great, but it sure makes me grateful, you know? And so I was a very depressed, very anxious child. You know, I grew up with a lot of depression and anxiety, and like you, I found out that I could get some relief with alcohol and drugs, you know. And I thought for a long time I found the solution. And, you know, I thought that was the solution, but it turned out that's a big problem, you know.
Yes, sir.
It has a way of turning on you.
And I think the part about it, for me at least, that caught me off guard is I still can't pinpoint when I stopped using drugs to cope and when I started to need drugs to function.
Yeah. I
It was
understand.
such a slippery slope. I don't remember. I can't
Yeah.
pinpoint even a time frame.
Yeah. Well, I'm convinced I was an alcoholic by the time I was 18. And it just kept getting worse and worse. But there was even times as a teenager that I tried to quit, but I couldn't, but I thought it was okay. I told myself that nobody can become an alcoholic without drinking liquor every day. And I was mostly a beer drinker, so I thought, well, I'm good. No,
Did you encounter also the stigma around it when you started doing the 12-step program?
uh,
If you don't mind me asking.
to some degree, yeah. My drinking buddies that I thought were my friends, when I said, well, I'm going to AA and I'm trying to stay sober, they say, well, just drink one, you know how they are.
Yes, sir.
And they say some really idiotic things out of their ignorance. But now I talk about it freely. It's part of my life now. It's part of my history. And like you, it's made me a better person, just getting through it. But the getting through it's the hell part.
Yes, sir. For me personally, the 12-step program did not work for me.
Really.
And that's not a knock on the 12-step program. I'm a very big advocate of the 12 steps.
Yeah.
It just wasn't for me. And anybody who can make it all the way through, just so much respect for you and people that have made the program work, for every day. Because I think an unhealthy idea of recovery is, well, he completed the 12 steps, he's cured. But you're really working the 12 steps every day.
Yeah.
You go from 1 to 12
It's
every
a way
day.
of life. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So like I said, I couldn't do it. The 12 steps for me, I couldn't do it, but just so much respect for you and the people who have made it work.
Well, thank you. And the same right back to you. Any way that you learn to live without drugs and alcohol after going through that hell, it's my hat's off to anybody that does that. Because you go through hell before you can get to anything good.
Yes, sir. My oldest daughter, I remember waking up in the hospital when I OD'd, and she was like sitting on me, because it's me, and I remember seeing the doctors around, and I see her, she's right there. I'm like, oh crap, But my very first thought was, who is this child?
Yeah.
And her mom came up to me and she goes, hey, I love you. I will always love you. But if you ever do this again, you're never going to see her grow up except through pictures. And I said, well, all right, that's fair. And I will also obviously be stopping this. And, people, when I tell people that story, sometimes they're like, oh, why would she say that? Because she didn't want her daughter being raised by a drug addict. What are you talking about?
That's understandable. Yeah.
I one of my biggest regrets in life, I don't have a lot of regrets. One of my biggest regrets in life is that I put her in that situation to have to say, hey, you have to choose between this child and this illness.
Yeah.
But I'm very thankful that she did, because my daughter actually lives with me. She's 13 now. She's my best friend, and I wouldn't have any relationship with her had her mom not said, hey, you've got to stop this right now, because I don't think I'd even be alive today.
Yeah. Sometimes that tough love is required, and it takes guts for somebody to say something like that. But like you say, she had to be desperate to do that. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So do you still feel like you're trying to get over those things that happened to you back then?
I'm in a weird place right now. So I think I've accepted, well, let me back up. I've accepted that I made the choice to join the Army. I accepted that I made the choice to choose the job I did. And I accepted that this was a part of those jobs, or the job that I did. And I think I've gotten to a point where I've accepted that these horrible things were stuff that I had to go through, better me than someone else. I think I haven't made peace with the fact that American soldiers were committing these crimes, because it completely shattered my ideal of the American military member. So that's where I'm at. I'm still trying to reconcile the vision of what I thought the American military was. It's not a bash on the military. I'm trying to reconcile that image with what this small group of people did while in the military. And I think that's my biggest struggle right now.
Are you talking about people that committed torture on the other people?
People who committed the torture, people who I've helped do prosecution for, because attorneys prosecute. I run paperwork.
Yeah.
But people that we've prosecuted for torture, I've been a part of trials where the crimes, again, involve children or underage people. And those ones are the ones that I still am kind of working my way through.
Yeah.
In 2019, we had a case where I went and sat with my attorney and we interviewed a coroner who did an autopsy for a baby that was 9 weeks old. And, I bring that up because a couple of weeks ago, I had a dream about the autopsy and I woke up and I didn't sleep again for, I was probably close to 30 something hours.
Yeah.
Because, you just, the human brain, I don't think was meant to see certain things.
Yeah, you just can't unsee something after you've seen it like that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And the baby was a victim of abuse. So when, she's like, well, there's bruising here, there's this laceration. And I was very numb to it at the time. I just kind of like pushed it down. And now that I'm really embracing recovery, I'm starting to like reopen those wounds. And I'm just like, man, this is a lot to reconcile, at least for me personally.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you gotten through it so you can have a good life now, and especially have your daughter with you. That's good. I'm always glad to see people get through hellish circumstances and, all the trauma and drama and whatever it is. And it's because I know it's not easy. And a lot of people don't get through it. A lot of people, I'm sure some that never get out of that hell. And that's really, really sad.
Yes, sir.
So sad.
The kind of segue into something that you mentioned earlier, when I was inpatient, they had a little library where we would go over and we could get books and read them because they didn't want us to have our phones. I mean, we didn't have smartphones of the level they have now.
Yeah.
They didn't want us texting people, texting our dealers or whatever. So there was a book over there. It was called Stealing Life and Cheating Death. And it was by Eddie Guerrero. I remember reading that book and I'm like, man, this man became a world champion.
Yeah.
He became a WWE Hall of Famer. He went through some of the same stuff I went through.
Yeah.
And, I'm reading it. And then I read a book called To Be the Man by Ric Flair.
Yeah. He was the man.
He was the man. And he lived that lifestyle. And I'm looking through it. I'm like, well, he made it work too. So I read these two books, and then a professional wrestler named CM Punk starts to hit the national stage.
Yeah.
And I could not have been a bigger fan of CM Punk. And he said something one day. He said, hey, I am straight edge because I'm better than you. And when he said that, I was watching it, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking around like, nobody else is getting offended by this. Okay, cool. So, when I would think about relapse, and I did obviously have relapses, but after a while, when I would think about relapsing, I'd be like, I'm not gonna let the dude on TV be better than me just because he doesn't need to do this, And I was able to turn a sincere love that I had for professional wrestling into kind of a coping tool to get through the urges and the needs for the addiction.
Yeah. There's a lot of professional wrestlers, past and present, that have gone through huge struggles with alcohol and or drugs and PTSD and all kinds of trauma. So yeah, I have a lot of respect for professional wrestlers. I mean, a lot of people say, well, that's just fake. How can you watch it? I say, well, it's entertainment. When you watch a movie, you don't think all of that's true, but you enjoy it.
Yes, sir.
And these people are entertainers, but they're also tremendous athletes. And a lot of them are extremely intelligent. They go on to become writers and actors. Look at The Rock. He's probably the biggest star in Hollywood nowadays.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot of fun in professional wrestling. And I noticed on your Facebook page, you're a fan of Orange Cassidy.
Huge fan of Orange Cassidy. Yes, sir.
He's something else, isn't he?
It's so hard. I've been watching wrestling for basically 30 years.
Yeah.
But I've watched clips and interviews and segments from the 60s on. And Orange Cassidy is something that I've never seen before, which is unique.
Yeah. Yeah.
He found a way to be unique in an absolutely saturated environment. And that's motivating to me.
Yeah.
Entertaining is all hell, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the way he does all the things he does with his hands in his pocket, like, it's no big deal.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yes, sir. It's that, and we have options now to watch professional wrestling.
Yeah.
And it wasn't always like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember my dad got me into professional wrestling when I was a kid. Back then, we had black and white TVs and not very 2 or 3 channels. And on Saturday afternoon, we would watch professional wrestling, and it was just really cool. And my mom, she would get up and leave the room. She's, oh, they're killing each other. They're killing them. But yeah, I grew up watching, the old timers. I remember as a teenager watching Black Jack Mulligan. You remember him?
Yes, sir.
Ric Flair and Arn Anderson, the Anderson brothers.
Yeah, Arnold.
Wahoo McDaniel. Do you remember him?
Yes, sir.
It was a good one. Yeah.
Ric Flair would say things like it's incredible to me that people don't realize the impact that Ric Flair as an individual has had on 2021 culture. When you talk about the wearing of the jewelry, and you talk about, well, I've got this many chains and I've got these expensive shoes. This started with Ric Flair saying that he had alligator shoes that were worth your mortgage payment. People say, well, I've got these smartwatches, and it became a symbol of where you're at in society. Well, yeah, Ric Flair was wheeling and dealing in Rolexes, telling us that he was better than us because of it. That's, to me, I can draw a straight line to Ric Flair to a lot of the things that have become societal norms today. And it's really amazing to me to look at those parallels.
Yeah. I think he got a lot of his ideas from Jesse Ventura,
Yes, sir.
I remember one shoot that Jesse Ventura was having, interview. The guy asked him, he said, well, Jesse, how come you never smile? Jesse says, tough men don't have to smile.
Yes, sir. I think you're 100% right. Him and Classy Freddie Blassie.
Yeah.
They just, the thing about professional wrestling for me is you take personality traits and you just magnify it by 100.
Magnify them, yeah, tremendously.
Yes, sir. And it's been one of the few consistent joys I've had in every phase of my life. Yeah. Would be, I could watch professional wrestling. Yeah. And I've always got this to go back to. And people say,
Road Warrior shirt.
Nice. I mean, every time I look over, I keep looking over at it like, I wonder what's on the bottom of that. So that was great. So when you think about professional wrestling, though, well, what are some of the fond memories that you look back on? Is it the sitting down and watching it on TV? Is it the going in person and being in the atmosphere? What is the things that you look back on fondly?
All of it, all of it. I remember, you remember Ronnie Garvin, I suppose.
Yes,
He
sir.
used to wrestle in the city I'm in, Johnson City, Tennessee. He would wrestle live here and I would see him sometimes. And Macho Man Randy Savage, I saw him live and he was so different in person. He was a real short guy. He was only about 5'8" or something like that.
Yes,
When
sir.
I
That's what
was
I've
a
heard.
teenager, I was taller than he was, but he looked so bigger than life on TV. We used to have a, do you remember Ron and Don Wright? Have you ever heard of them?
I
They
don't think
didn't,
so.
they didn't make national fame like WWE or anything, but they were heels. They were brothers, in this area, and they had this thing with a cigar. And they'd bring a cigar into the ring, and it always looked like they were burning the eyes out of somebody. They'd stick it up there, and they'd go. And as a teenager, I believed that was real. I'm thinking, how come the law don't arrest them? How do they get away with this crap? Well, it was wonderful. It was wonderful.
In the I want to say it was the late '90s. Brian Pillman and Steve Austin had a program together,
Yeah.
and there was Brian Pillman is one of my top 10 favorite wrestlers easily. And one of the program I'm talking about is very well known. He shot a pistol in his home towards Steve Austin. And I remember thinking, well, obviously somebody's going to jail. Like obviously they're going to be arrested. And then the next week they're cutting a promo, and I'm like, all right, wait a minute. Something
Yeah.
about this isn't right.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
there's always seems to be a lot of strange things happening backstage, don't they?
it's a weird place to be backstage, apparently.
Yeah.
And, when I look back at just kind of professional wrestling in general, the match that I don't remember what the first wrestling match I ever saw was, but I know what the first wrestling match I remember is, and it was Mr. Perfect versus Bret Hart at SummerSlam. And I remember, buying into the kayfabe, and it was an amazing wrestling match. When I got older and I started to learn the backstory, Mr. Perfect is dealing with the back injury. Bret has to kind of walk him through certain spots and everything. It made it so much more of a moment for me, because these people are going through this tremendous physical pain. They're performing in front of millions of people, thousands live.
Yeah.
And they're able to just keep going, just keep pushing. It was something that they loved.
And some of them really do get injured during the matches, and they just keep on going. Look at all the things that Mick Foley put his body through over the years, man. It's amazing he can even move.
I, to this day, don't know how Mick Foley functions. Just generally speaking.
Yeah. I remember Cactus Jack, and then there was Mankind. And
Yes, sir. And Dude Love.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Hardy brothers, especially Rick Hardy, he's done some amazing things.
Well, when you look back, do you think that you talk about the Hardy brothers, and you think about the Steiners and Harlem Heat and Arn and Ole Anderson, do you think that the state of wrestling today is too focused on the big moves and not enough on the small storytelling?
Yeah, it's a lot faster pace, and they don't do, they're fooling the referee, doing all these things. It's like there's no rules nowadays, Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And yeah, those storylines were better back then. Some of them nowadays are just so ridiculous. Yeah.
Well, I agree. I think the audience, the targeted audience for professional wrestling, I'm starting to leave that age group.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of it changed with the target audience's consumption of media. And, I'm still I'll sit down and I'll be watching it and I'll get really into it and I'll wait for somebody to say, hey, that's fake, right? Well, it's real to me, damn it. Like,
it's real entertainment.
It is real entertainment. And, my daughter said something that I will take with me for a very long time. And this happened this year. She was watching a YouTube video of someone else playing a video game. And I said, hey, that doesn't make any sense. Why are you watching someone play a game? And she goes, I don't know. Why do you watch football? That's a great question. And that is now also my response to when people say, well, why do you watch that? I don't know. Why do you watch football? You're not playing it. Just let me be here.
Yeah. Why do you watch that movie? I mean, that's actors there, Sting, he was great. Well, he's coming back now, he doesn't do the wild moves he used to, of course, but he's back at it again.
Yes, sir. Last night he performed at a pay-per-view. He's 60 something years old and he jumped off of a 10-foot platform and landed on two people. Yes, sir. Yeah. And he got up, he did his whole thing and he got back in the ring. I think I dislocated my back trying to get out of bed this morning. So he's just a better human than I am in general.
Yeah. Now, Ricky Morton, you remember the Rock and Roll Express?
Yes, sir.
Ricky Morton lives in my area and he's got a wrestling school called the School of Morton around here. And he still wrestles sometimes, but it's not different. He's got a big pot belly and he moves really, really slow. And he tries to say he's in his prime, but he's way past it.
I saw him, one of the coolest things that made me, because there are times where I just start to get really annoyed with wrestling, specifically WWE.
Yeah.
And I'll start to navigate away from it. And I saw a video of Ricky Morton doing a move called a Canadian Destroyer, which is where he stands up, he puts the opponent's, bends over, and he puts their head between their legs, and he does a front flip with the opponent, and it looks like a spike pile driver. And the entire move is on the person receiving it. And he executed the move one time, and I was like, oh my God, he looks like $1 million right now.
Yeah.
And, when you hear the team that he was going, him and I forget I forget Ricky Morton's partner, but
Robert Gibson.
Robert Gibson. So I always want to say, yeah, it's Bobby Eaton. So you look at the team that just went against them, and they're like, this was an honor for us, and we were so happy to be able to share the ring with these guys. And there's just a level of respect in professional wrestling that you just don't see in other parts of society.
Yeah.
It's not about the rookie trying to come and take the veteran starting position.
Yeah.
So I've always really admired that part of the business as well.
That reminds me of a match I saw between The Undertaker and Triple H. Do you remember that one?
Yes, sir.
There was a lot of respect there, and Shawn Michaels was the referee. That was a great match.
Well, it's one of the endearing images of wrestling because they're just all up on the ramp at the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great. I remember watching that live, or I wasn't there, but I remember watching it on TV as it was happening, and I'm teary-eyed.
Yeah, and The Undertaker, I lost count of how many times he's retired.
Yeah, Undertaker is definitely the Brett Favre of professional wrestling.
Yeah, he definitely had a long ride, that's for sure.
Yes, sir. Watching The Undertaker got me interested in motorcycles.
Yeah. His character evolved in a very interesting way. He ended up being a biker, but he started out being this kind of mortician, I don't know, half-dead person or something, with pallbearer, and it was really weird back then. It's totally different.
And people that try and knock me for liking professional wrestling, they'll bring that up too, like, well, The Undertaker's changed so much. Okay, you used to wear diapers. You changed too. Let me enjoy what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice watching them go through the changes, and it's kind of like we grow with them. It's interesting.
Yes, sir.
Bret
Absolutely.
Hart, he was great. It was really, really tragic what happened to Owen Hart. I know you know about that. He died trying to come down from the ceiling on a rope. And it kind of got me all pissed off at Vince because they went on with the show that night.
I was just about to say that. Yes, sir.
They went on with the show. And I don't think Bret Hart ever really got over that. He was mad at Vince for a long time over that, understandably.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And people
Who's your favorite? Who's your favorite of all time?
Whew. Okay, that's a good question. Thank you for that question. Honestly, I just think Ric Flair is the ultimate professional wrestler.
Yeah.
If you're talking about, the best promo, the person I think spoke the best, it was CM Punk. The best technical wrestler I've ever seen in my life was probably Bret Hart, as we've mentioned. The best look I've ever seen for a professional wrestler was probably Triple H, but Ric Flair had all of that.
Yeah.
And, Ric Flair, you hated him for who he was, but you wanted to be him in the same breath.
Enjoyed hating him. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And he made wrestling funny. He still does sometimes.
Yeah.
It still pops up and just makes it great.
And then there was the woo.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that was great.
The last wrestling event I went to was in Charlotte, North Carolina, and his daughter, Charlotte, ironically, she came out, and that environment was unlike anything I've ever experienced,
Yeah.
And
sure it was.
It's an amazing thing. People think that I basically replaced or substituted one addiction for a much healthier one. The high that I used to get doing things I shouldn't be doing now when I'm in a crowd, although I haven't been in a crowd of anyone since, last year for global reasons.
Yeah.
But when you're in the crowd and the music hits and it's you and your kid and this person and their kid, and we don't know if the parents or the kids are screaming louder, but we know that we're all there. It's an amazing adrenaline rush. It's a high that I really cherish, and I'm very thankful for it.
Yeah. I always say it's like cartoons for adults, real life cartoons.
It's a very appropriate comparison, because I used to watch Saturday morning cartoons and then Saturday afternoon wrestling.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you remember the Monday Night Wars when WCW and WWF back in, they had a thing going, didn't they?
Yes, sir.
Big rivalry.
I was so invested emotionally in the Monday Night War. When I was growing up, the deal that I had with my parents was that I could stay up and watch Monday Night Nitro if I made the honor roll. So
that helped you make the honor roll, didn't it?
I became really smart really quick. And it's just, like I said, it's something that I talk about very fondly, and with the same reverence that I talk about addiction and recovery is the same emotion, the same reverence I put into professional wrestling, because to me, they're interchained, or they're interlinked in my life.
Yeah. And a lot of the wrestlers are extremely intelligent and well educated. Like Glenn Jacobs, for example, Kane. He lives down the road about 100 miles from me in Knoxville, Tennessee. He is actually the mayor of Knox County. Did you know that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So that's just one example, honestly, of performers branching out and making a huge impact outside of wrestling. I mean, Jesse Ventura was a politician for a while.
Yeah, he was governor of what, Minnesota? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I don't know where exactly he was, but I know that he was elected.
Yeah.
Glenn Jacobs, as you mentioned, and there's a women's wrestler in AEW right now. Her name is Britt Baker. She is a legitimate licensed dentist.
Dr. Britt Baker.
Dr. Britt Baker. Yeah. She's a legitimate dentist. So that's just amazing to me. She's a doctor. She's living out her dream. I'm still trying to decide what I'm gonna eat for lunch. Like I'm not on the same playing field as these guys and gals, you know.
Yeah, you got to respect them for what they do, you know. Uh, and the things they got to learn to do in training, you know, some of the moves they make they're just unnatural. You know,
Yes,
like
sir.
intentionally jumping up in the air and landing on your back. I can't imagine even trying that.
No, sir. Like I said, I struggle with the basic human movements
Yeah,
of walking and chewing gum at the same time.
yeah,
I'm definitely not gonna be able to pull off all this intricate stuff.
yeah. So, who's your favorite female wrestler?
Uh, so I actually on a video series that I'm doing, I'm a huge advocate for women's wrestling.
Mm.
A huge advocate for women's wrestling. And when you look back at the history of women's wrestling, you know, it's a real shaky history to look at.
Yeah,
It's a real Fabulous Moolah is often talked about in an amazing light, but then when you peel the curtain back, you know, we found out there are stories that don't necessarily lend themselves to that aura that she has. So, you know, I look at Trish Stratus, I look at Lita.
ooh, I looked at her a lot.
We all did. I think we all did.
Yeah,
But you know, when you look in the 80s and 90s, you know, you had Wendy Richter, you had Alundra Blaze, who ended up becoming Medusa in WCW, to now, you know, Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, Bailey, and Becky Lynch are the four horsewomen of WWE.
yeah. Especially
And
Charlotte Flair. I love her.
Charlotte Flair is she stood next to me. I was at an event, like we weren't meeting or anything. I was just like sitting ringside, and I've never felt so tiny in my life.
Really?
Like, I'm sitting here, I'm looking up, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, you're up there. That's cool.
How tall is she?
Taller than me, and I've never looked it up because I don't want to know how much taller.
Yeah.
Uh, but you know, those people or those women have really progressed wrestling to where it's not women's wrestling anymore. It's just wrestling, and
Yeah.
women happen to be doing it.
Yeah. Have you watched Sue Young?
I have actually.
I love watching her. That is a great character. She does that so well.
Sue Young is, I think, an example of, you know, Bray Wyatt, the Undertaker, where the character, she's invested so much in the character that she can make a storyline out of anything if you just give her 5 minutes and let her be herself.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And it's great to watch.
Yeah, I love watching her. It's the undead.
Yes, sir. And there was another one that caught my eye too. It was, I think her name was Laurel Van Ness, the hot mess. You know, she comes out.
She's got her.
So she was with NXT, which is a subsidy of WWE, and she just got released to go back to, and she's going to start going back to her old character. But she comes out and like half of her face is done in messed up makeup, and she's just this frantic, out there character. And you know, I'm sitting there and I'm watching it, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I can relate to this. Her character is crazy and bouncing off the walls. It's how it makes me feel when I have to pay a child support payment, honestly. Like I can relate to it real well.
Yeah. Do you remember China?
I do. You know, China holds a very special place in a lot of people's hearts, especially as a female wrestler. You know, she won what was considered to be a men's championship.
Yeah.
She entered the Royal Rumble. It was, China was groundbreaking.
She was, yeah. Didn't she go on to make some movies? Didn't she make a few movies, or maybe still does? I don't know.
I'm not really sure, but I know that in wrestling, I can speak to a lot of that as far as in wrestling goes. After wrestling, I'm not really sure how that whole thing panned out for her.
Yeah. And the ECW. Now, I loved the ECW before WWE bought them out and changed it all. You know, it was something special. It was different. They were the first really hardcore wrestlers, I think. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And they had some good ones.
And there's still a huge following for ECW, you know, 20, 30 years later.
Yeah. Francine, remember Francine?
Francine was the baddest woman on the planet for a while.
Yeah, she was. I don't particularly like these intergender matches. What about you? I don't like them.
So I didn't. I did not like them for a very long time. And I saw one that kind of changed my opinion of it. And it was, well, two of them actually. One of them was between a couple. The man's name is Will Ospreay and the woman's name is B. Priestley. And it was right around the time the pandemic happened. So they put on this thing, they put it on YouTube, I believe. And there wasn't like a, let me take this careful because you're a female. No, it was going after each other. And I was like, this is equality. Like this is that equal opportunity thing I've been hearing about.
Yeah.
And then another one was a gentleman named Claudio Castagnoli, who is now known as Cesaro in WWE. He had a match against someone named Sarah Del Rey. And you couldn't have convinced me that this was an intergender match. This just looked like a fight.
Yeah.
So where I used to be uncomfortable with it, I've kind of gotten to a place where I'm like, you know what? As long as it's entertaining and it's not degrading to either side, I'm at least open to watching it because I've seen a couple of really entertaining ones.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some good ones, but as a rule, I think one of my favorite matches, I don't remember who it was, is a female wrestlers. It was a hardcore match, and ended up about 5 or 6 of them involved, and it's supposed to be in one-on-one, and it was tables, ladders, chairs, and chains, and everything else. It was really great. I think that was on the what they call it, Riot Girls or something. Are you familiar with that one?
I don't think so. No, sir.
Yeah,
Oh, the Riot Squad.
maybe that was it.
So I tell everybody this is an amazing time to watch wrestling because, like I said, I'm a girl dad before I'm anything. So wrestling is to the point now where when I was growing up, the women were not there because of their talent.
Yeah.
That was not the big draw. Now women are wrestlers, and it's a very, when I was watching wrestling, I can't imagine being a dad trying to watch the women that would come on to wrestle with my daughter. Because there were no storylines. I'm not saying there was no talent, but there wasn't a lot of it.
Yeah.
And, last night was a wrestling clinic between two women wrestlers, Dr. Britt Baker and Hikaru Shida. Had a wrestling match last night, and I could sit down with my daughter and say, look, they've really perfected their craft. They've, put a lot into this. They're telling us a story. And you couldn't always do that with women's wrestling. So it's nice to see that evolution in the business.
Yeah, it is. Man, I really enjoyed talking to you. I appreciate you coming on my show and sharing what you shared about your life experiences. And it's definitely been fun talking about wrestling.
Yes, sir. Mr. Holder, I really appreciate it. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't say to the families of people who unfortunately have a lot on them today, Memorial Day. We all wish for them to have as good of a day as they can today, because Memorial Day isn't about veterans. So I just want to say, I always feel bad saying Happy Memorial Day. So I would just like for the families who have to deal with Memorial Day on a very personal level, I just wish them the best day that they can have today.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for your service.
No, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
And folks, thanks for joining in or tuning in to Holding On with Holder. Please subscribe to my channel and feel free to share this video all over social media. And I will let you go, brother. And thanks again for being my guest. And you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, sir. You as well.
All right. Bye-bye.